Sourcing! Hey, when I say that, can you make like lightning bolts come down and like thunder and the whole screen shakes? Like make it dramatic? Sourcing! All right, so we're gonna talk about sourcing today because nobody wants to. And I like talking about things that make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be. Lorena Hickson, founder of Passion and Growth, has found the secret recipe for success with that, and it's through Michael Vicker over at Procurement. And he's gonna be joining us today to talk about how they work together to be the ultimate 1-2 punch in getting it done. Let's dive into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to SUBTA Studios. If you're like me, when you hear the word sourcing, you tend to shut down a little bit, you get a little scared. But if you're like Lorena and Michael here, you don't feel that way. It's not a commercial, it's not a sales pitch. We're gonna have some fun talking about sourcing tasks that we all face in the subscription box world. So let's dive into it, and I'll just kind of let our audience know. Lorena Hickson, you run a great subscription box called Passion and Growth, and Michael Vicker, you are the founder of Procurement. We're so excited to have you guys here today to talk about both sides of this, right? From the side of the subscription box company that is out there constantly sourcing, and also from the side of the company that's helping find these products and bring them in there. And there's so many great tips and tricks I know we're going to walk away with here today. So tell us your story and tell us about some of your early days of how you got started with your sourcing.
So when I first started, those that do know me, so my background is in ER nursing. I was an ER nurse for 8 years and then got this wild hair to start a subscription box. And so the idea of sourcing was absolutely foreign to me. I didn't know what the terms meant. I was like, what's the difference between like manufacturing and distributing and wholesale and like white label? And none of it made any sense. And so when I first started, I started pretty simple on websites, like Fair and Tundra. I was starting pretty small and I was only sourcing, about 100 to 150 units of a product at a time. I also got lucky and found a couple like Facebook groups where other boxes who were bigger than me were selling off their like excess inventory and such. And so in the beginning, it was really difficult. I remember looking at like my margins and my budget and wondering like how in the world am I going to fit, I need 5 to 6 items and my budget's X, like there's no way I can make that work. And so it was hard at the beginning. If you look at my budgets from the beginning, it's in the red at the very beginning because sourcing, it was not something I was very good at. It's something that takes time. In the first couple months, I totally blew that budget out of the water. And then moving forward, it got a little bit, I understood how it worked a little bit better, and you have more buying power once you start increasing numbers. And I started learning about other resources. And yes, you can like source from overseas, or there is businesses like Procurement. But in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. I did a lot of working with like small women-owned businesses at the time because we could help each other out. And even though like 100 to them was a lot, but compared to like a big business, like 100 is not a lot. So I kind of figured out how I could make it work. And I used like Etsy a lot and found a lot of like smaller makers who we could help each other out before I had the buying and negotiating power of, like 300, 400, 500 units.
Yeah. And you hustled it out, right? You figure it out.
Figured it out.
You do whatever it takes. And that's what you do as an entrepreneur. So Michael, you've talked to a lot of people in similar shoes to Lo and getting started here. Is this a typical story? Is this what you typically see out there, how people get started?
Yeah, for sure. Like there's a lot of boxes we talk to that originally are in the red and they're just trying to get to that, that volume where the numbers can make sense. And once they get there, options overseas are just ways to kind of reduce their costs to increase their margins. Gives them the flexibility to spend in other things, in marketing, in employees, other things to help grow their business. So it's kind of getting to that critical inflection point where it makes sense to do so.
Let's say somebody who is in her shoes is watching this. What are some of the best practices you can recommend for somebody who's just getting started and getting rolling out there?
Yeah, so it's definitely the most difficult part is the when you're under a couple hundred units, you kind of do have to be looking domestically. You also want to be nimble enough where you're not exactly sure. You don't have the history of looking at what your numbers are, what they're going to be like. So sourcing domestically at first, just have a proof of concept for your box makes a lot of sense. Depending on the niche, once you get up to a couple hundred subscribers, 200, 300, maybe more recently, it's gone up a little bit more just because of shipping costs. So let's call it 300, 400. Looking overseas, working with a partner like us to bring your costs down really starts to make sense. So it's kind of finding what for your niche, what that critical inflection point is.
Okay, so that inflection point varies based on the products and based on the niches then?
Yeah, for sure. It also varies kind of based on the size of the item. So really from overseas, there's two main ways to source products, by air and by sea. And by sea, there's fixed costs associated with it. So you want to, if you're under a certain volume, you kind of want to be by air, but by air, it's totally a function of weight and volume of the item. And so, you kind of want to be flexible when you're under 500 or 600 units to be able to choose items that are going to be what we call tariff alpha or shipping alpha that are going to be economical to put in your box.
Okay, so, but that number's in the few hundred typically. Like once you get beyond that few hundred, that's when it really starts to say, okay, we should really look at overseas at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say to give some figures, at 300 units, it makes sense to be overseas. You just have to be flexible. You might have to choose low weight items, low volume items, things like that. Once you get up to about 1,000 units, the world's kind of your oyster in the sense of anything you do is going to be economical, and it's definitely recommended to start looking overseas and increase your margins at that point.
Got it. So that few hundred point is let's start exploring this. So Lo, I'm going to ask you, based on all of your experience and your growth, do you have any tips for those that are still maybe sourcing on their own and recommendations for them and where they should be looking?
Yeah, so I did do, like Michael mentioned, I did do a lot of domestic ordering at that time because it was a lot more economical. I think the thing that we did that helped a lot, we were just very upfront with what our budget was. And so we, even looking at online at prices, you can typically guess the wholesale is about 50%. If you're buying 100, 200, 300 units, a lot of these businesses are still going to be willing to give you even a bigger discount. And so I find that a lot of people sometimes are not asking or even asking if there's a bigger discount. So usually with my first outreach email, I'm immediately asking, I tell them what I do. I link to what I do. I tell them about my mission and say, this is what I'm looking at. Here's, what kind of pricing can you offer? Do you offer bulk discounts? And so a lot of times, we found that they would come back and again, so on my company, we only source from women-owned businesses and we are supporting other women. So a lot of these other companies that we're reaching out to have a similar mission as us as well in empowering women. And so a lot of them would write back and be we love your mission. We would love to work with you. Here's what we can offer. And even at that point, if it was still above what I could feasibly do, I would write back as well and be thank you so much. I want to be upfront though. Here's what I can do. This is the max point that I could do on this. I would love to work with you. We can feature you on our blog posts or socials, all these other things to try to make it more beneficial. Is that something you could do? And a lot of times they came back and said yes. And so I think a lot of it is not being scared to just continue to have these conversations and be I want this to be mutual beneficial, but also this is my max. And if that's not doable, I understand you're a business as well. But if you can do it, here's how we could meet in the middle and try to make this mutually beneficial.
What a great way to look at it, and a very kind approach, right? And I want to find something that works for everybody involved in this. How can we work together? Curious, what percentage of emails would you send out there you get a response back versus no response whatsoever?
In the very beginning, actually, we very rarely did not get responses.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm surprised. Now that we're bigger, we get more no responses now than we did in the beginning.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know if it was just because we just were so careful about who we were reaching out to. Now we reach out to a lot more people. In the very beginning, we were so small. It was me and one BA. So we were very particular about, we want this item. Let's reach out to these 3 companies. And they're highly just niche down and let's try to work on this. Whereas now, if we're looking for a product, there's multiple hands that can reach out and we're maybe messaging 10, 15 people. And so it's a little bit casting a wider net. But I think just that higher touch point and being smaller and making the emails very personal helped a lot.
So I want to transition that to the kind of once you get to the next level of out there seeking sourcing partners. I think, the common thing is people go into Alibaba, they find maybe a product they're looking for, they message that person on Alibaba and they start talking. Pros and cons to that, there's things that work there and then sometimes it's hard to tell if maybe that person's trustworthy. I mean, Michael, we'd hope they'd all kind of come across you and find a company like yours. what are some things that people should be looking out for when they start to put those feelers out there, when they start to make those asks in their sourcing decisions?
Yeah, for sure. Sourcing from overseas, of course, the benefit is there. You're going to get low costs because of just kind of the manufacturing capabilities they have out there. For contract manufacturing, which is what we do in the subscription box world, where you're not making the same item day in and day out, overseas is the place because of kind of the infrastructure they have in place. What you have to be careful with is kind of the legalities of it, and making sure you're kind of covered. The first example being, sunglasses. Making sunglasses and putting them, making them into the US. If you're going straight to a manufacturer overseas, they're not really necessarily knowledgeable on the compliance within the US. And so you might be manufacturing sunglasses, you import them, and then suddenly, the FDA and customs says, do you have the drop ball test? And if you don't have the drop ball test, they're just going to seize your sunglasses. So you've already paid for the manufacturer.
What is this test?
What is
So
that?
it's a test where essentially they take the sunglasses and, they drop them from a certain height. It's an FDA required test. And, the sunglasses kind of have to be shatterproof.
Wow.
And yeah, so we've heard a lot of horror stories where clients have ordered sunglasses from overseas. They arrive in the US and then the FDA seizes them. And so they've got them going out in their subscription box next month. And yet they've already paid the manufacturing costs. They've already paid to ship them, and they've got no product to show for it. So you got to be really careful about kind of the legalities of it and just making sure everything's compliant on the import side. The other thing that's often very common that we see in working with manufacturers on Alibaba is, if you're manufacturing a product for, let's say $10, and the tariff rate on that item is 25%. And so you owe $2.50 on tariffs. What a manufacturer might do is quote you to your door. They might say, hey, do you know what? We're going to do it for $11 to your door. And you're wondering, well, how are they getting such a great price? And the way they're doing it is on the documents, instead of putting $10 as the manufacturing price, they're maybe putting $1 on the manufacturing price. So when they're paying the tariffs, instead of paying $2.50, they're paying 25 cents. What they're doing is completely illegal, and it doesn't get caught often, but when it gets caught, your goods again are seized. So you've already paid the Alibaba supplier, so he has no risk. Yeah. She has no risk. They have no risk. They're putting all the risk on you, and maybe it only happens 1% of the time, but 1% of the time can eat away at your profit margins.
Absolutely. I'm still amazed that there's people at these ports that are just pulling out sunglasses and dropping them on the ground to see what happens consistently.
Yeah. It's more, it doesn't happen on every shipment. There's a lot of shipments that aren't compliant that do get through, for sure.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that one time that yours is flagged and pulled, and that creates a whole host of issues, and even further complicates this global supply chain challenge we have right now. Let's talk about 2022 for a minute. And obviously, there's tons of supply chain challenges in the news. There's a lot that's kind of coming down the pipeline of we've got preparation for the Olympics in a year or so. China's shutting down factories to help reduce the pollution count in the country, and all sorts of logistics challenges that are happening right now. Lorena, if you can share with us, first starting with you, what are you doing to help plan for 2022, and what advice can you give others, as your lessons you've learned so far along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that was part of when I first started working with procurement. I definitely was not planning ahead enough. I was very much doing it like a month, 2 months in advance. And once I started working with him, that was something that, Michael sat down and gave me like a schedule of, moving forward, here's the dates that we need to have these products ready to go by if it's going to be shipped in like this month. And so the same thing for 2022. And this is also really nice because me as a business owner, I'm doing 100 things, and sometimes I'm not always up to date on what's going on with the supply chain, but they do a beautiful job of keeping us up to date. And so they're constantly sending out emails or like on our meetings, letting us know these things that are happening. And so they're telling me, okay, if you want a product now for, April, you need to order it now. And so things that I'm doing, like we've already mostly planned out through June, which is the farthest we've ever been planned. And so right now, like we've ordered all of our products through April with procurement, and now we're finalizing, I believe June and July actually. So we're way far ahead, which is nice because a lot of that stress is taken off of me because I know that yes, it's far in advance, but I know that my product's going to arrive probably earlier than what I need it, but they're always so prepared and they build in time for shipping delays or just any unforeseen circumstances. So that would be my biggest advice, is to try to sit down and pre-plan as far as you can, then a six to 8 months, just because it's very unpredictable what's going on right now. Plus we have Chinese New Year, like you said, the Olympics, like the pollution, they're shutting down factories. There's so many different things. And honestly, I wouldn't know about any of this if it weren't for procurement, like keeping me up to date real time about what's going on. So I know how to plan best.
Yeah, that's really cool. So Michael, tell us, how do you keep your clients organized, and, how do you help them kind of look out, as far as you do, because that's a tough habit to change. I mean, typically when you're like, okay, I'm going to start to curate next month or maybe the month after, and now you're asking them to curate, 6-7 months ahead of schedule. In this case, 8.
It was tough.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. I think, to plug SubSummit, Jake spoke about this at SubSummit, the concept of 12 months in a day. Mm-hmm. And the concept of, if you have to plan out today and then you're going to plan out tomorrow, and the day after, you're not really getting ahead. But take one day and plan out. You don't have to plan out 100% of the things that are going in your box, but 80, 90%. You can have 12 months planned out, and you might have holes to fill in, but you know exactly what's going in each box. And it doesn't mean you have to order it all at the same time, but at least you're prepared so that if you do have to place an order early because of things changing across the globe, you're ready to do so. And so that's credit to Lorena and her team and Lacey and everyone on the Passion and Growth team for kind of being able to simultaneously plan tomorrow as well as 3 months out, 4 months out, and 5 months out. But yeah, we use with Passion and Growth, we have an Asana board that works really well. With other clients, we work on different platforms, Trello boards, Basecamp, but really what it allows you to do is have a list of product ideas, a list of backup items that can work really well with short turnaround times, and then kind of planned out across the top different months so you can kind of drop and drag. Cool. And then within each with each product card, all communication within that product is kept within that card. So if you need pricing, timelines, specs, packaging, design files, it's all there so anyone can access it at any time. And so it's a great organizational tool for product curation.
That's cool. That's a really neat approach. So then you're saying across the top there, you've got all the different months. And so as you have an idea for a product, you'll have it in there. And then let's say you're like, oh shoot, this isn't going to fit in this month. You can drag it to the next one, and you guys can communicate in real time that way then.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
That's a really neat approach. And probably, has that been game changing for your business, Lorena?
Oh, it makes all the difference. So otherwise, I don't know how I would keep it straight, but it's so nice because we have all the themes laid out. And then, Michael and his team, they will go in and put the due dates. So I know, so you can look at it and in real time see, okay, I've got, May's box. Okay, well, we need to have an answer. We need to be in production by November 1st. And so in real time, we could be moving our different cards depending on what the product is, and they can be telling me, yes, we can do this in time. No, we can't, or the price changed on this due to shipping, and all these things that could be happening in real time in real conversation, and it makes it a lot easier to plan, and it's changed the game for our business, being able to plan this far in advance, and also knowing we have backup items already planned. They have a list for us of items that we can airship if something happens. And so it's really been a huge weight off our shoulders to not be, planning only 2 months from now, but be planning 6 to 8 months in advance.
Yeah. All right. So Lo, I know you've got a couple things sitting right there with you, and to show that the stuff that Michael produces is actually real, can you show us some of those things?
It is real. It's a lot of good stuff. One of our customer favorites actually has been the vegan dry brush. We've also done a makeup cloth. So these are some of the items that we've curated with the help from procurement, and they are real products. They do a great job, and they did all the legwork for me getting these. So it was absolutely amazing.
That's so cool. So we talked about a lot of great things today. We talked about kind of that inflection point of when if you're sourcing on your own and going to companies locally, domestically, about that 300 to 1,000 point where you're really starting to be looking internationally. We spoke about just the difference between sea and air and, what you should be looking at there. The bank of procurement, obviously, looking at credit terms and financing and working with partners that will give you that flexibility, I think are important. We talked about the guys at the port that are just dropping sunglasses all day long. That's all they do. They drop sunglasses to the ground. But important things to be thinking about there, and especially, what things are getting marked for on your bills. And then, of course, knowing, that planning. how important that is. So some amazing takeaways for our audience here today. I absolutely love talking about this. We could talk about this for hours, but we like to keep things short and to the point. Lo, if anybody is interested in signing up for your subscription box, where should they go?
Of course. So you can go to passionandgrowth.com. And right now we do have a discount offer going on our first box. You can actually get your first box free with a 6 or 12-month membership. So we've got that going on, a limited time promotion. And then of course I'm on socials at passionandgrowth.com. And we do lots of fun stuff on social, on Instagram and Facebook. So you can give us a follow.
Awesome. So we'll encourage people to give you a follow. Check out the website. We love supporting our community. So the holidays are upon us. If you're looking for great gifts for the holiday season, definitely check that out. And Michael, those that are interested in connecting with you guys and learning more about how you can be of assistance now we're going into the new year. So what's the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, for sure. Our website is www.yourprocurement.com. But my email is michael@yourprocurement.com, and the mint is MINT, like a mint leaf. And that's where to find us.
Thank you both so much for being here today. Truly, like, tons of valuable information for our community. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our channels, follow us for more great content. And we look forward to seeing everybody on our next episode. Take care.
Thank you for watching this SUBTA Studios presentation.
Please continue to check out our premium content right here on this website.
Is there a topic you'd like to see us cover? Please feel free to contact us on social or email us at letstalk@subta.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of our community.